What was hidden behind the walls of Freddie Mercury's mansion after his death? When he passed away in 1991, the world lost one of the most powerful voices in rock history. Fans mourned the legend they saw on stage, but inside his London home, Garden Lodge, something far more personal was left behind, and it stunned even the people closest to him. Garden Lodge in Kensington wasn't just a house, it was Freddie's private world, protected by tall brick walls. When the doors finally opened,
and adulation he deserves.
It's like unconquered territory. So
what remained inside revealed the man behind the spotlight. Long before he became Freddie Mercury, he was born Farrokh Bulsara on September 5, 1946, in Stone Town, Zanzibar, then under British rule. His parents, Bomi and Jera Bulsara, were from the Parsi community of Western India. Their roots traced back to Gujarat, and they practiced Zoroastrianism, holding tightly to their traditions even as life moved them across countries. Freddie was born with 4 extra incisors, something unusual that many believe helped shape his incredible vocal range. Whether coincidence or destiny, his voice would later become one of the most recognizable in music history. Although he was born in Zanzibar, much of his childhood was spent in India. At just 7 years old, he began learning piano while living with relatives. A year later, he was sent to St. Peter's School, a British-style boarding school near Bombay. That's where his transformation truly began. By day, he collected stamps, a hobby he shared with his father. One of those stamp collections is now preserved in the Postal Museum in London. But by night, his passion shifted to music. At just 12 years old, he formed a school band called the Hectics. They performed covers of Elvis Presley, Cliff Richard, and Little Richard. Even then, Freddie stood out. Friends remembered his rare talent. He could hear a song once on the radio and instantly replay it on the piano. It was also during his school years that Farrokh began calling himself Freddie, a name that would soon become legendary. In 1963, he returned to Zanzibar to reunite with his parents, but history had other plans. In 1964, the Zanzibar Revolution erupted. The violent uprising forced thousands of Arabs and Indians to flee. Freddie's family had no choice but to escape. They moved to England, settling in Feltham, Middlesex, a world away from the tropical island life he once knew. The family moved between several homes before finally settling on Gladstone Avenue. England changed everything. Freddie studied art at Isleworth Polytechnic and later at Ealing Art College, where he graduated in 1969 with a diploma in graphic design. Those same design skills would later help him create the iconic Queen crest, a symbol recognized across the world. This was the foundation. Before the fame, before the stadiums, before Queen, there was a young boy shaped by culture, displacement, talent, and ambition. And the story was only just beginning. Before the fame, before the stadiums, Freddie Mercury was just a young man trying to survive in London. He worked as a baggage handler at Heathrow Airport, lifting heavy suitcases while carrying even heavier dreams inside. He also sold vintage scarves and secondhand clothes at Kensington Market, side by side with a new friend, drummer Roger Taylor. Back then, he wasn't the global icon. As one friend later said, he was just my crazy mate, always chasing excitement. Yet behind that growing flamboyance, there was another side. Some people remembered him as quiet and observant, someone who listened more than he spoke. But once he stepped on stage, everything changed. The shy art student disappeared, and a force of nature took over. In 1969, he became the lead singer of a band called Ibex, later renamed Wreckage. The group leaned into blues rock inspired by Jimi Hendrix. For a while, Freddie even lived above a pub on Penny Lane, fully immersed in Liverpool's music scene. When Wreckage fell apart, he joined another band, Sour Milk Sea. That didn't last long either. To outsiders, it looked like failure. To Freddie, it was training. Every setback sharpened him. Every rejection built his stage presence. He wasn't losing, he was preparing. In 1970, everything shifted. Freddie joined forces with Roger Taylor and guitarist Brian May, stepping in as the frontman of their band Smile. A year later, bassist John Deacon completed the lineup. The chemistry was undeniable. But one thing still needed to change: the name. Freddie pushed hard for Queen. Some hesitated, but he believed in it completely. He said it sounded regal, strong, and universal. He understood the bold edge of the name, and that was exactly the point. Around this time, he legally changed his surname from Bulsara to Mercury. The transformation was official. Freddie Mercury had arrived. Even before the band exploded worldwide, he shaped its identity. He designed the iconic Queen crest himself, a detailed coat of arms combining the members' zodiac signs: lions for Deacon and Taylor, a crab for May, and two fairies for himself, representing Virgo. A crown sat inside a giant Q, all rising beneath a powerful phoenix. It looked royal, and it felt unstoppable. Freddie's speaking voice was naturally deep, but when he sang, he soared into a powerful tenor range that set Queen apart. As a songwriter, he refused to repeat himself. Bohemian Rhapsody, We Are the Champions, Somebody to Love, Don't Stop Me Now, each song sounded completely different. He chased change. He followed inspiration wherever it led. And that fearless creativity turned Queen into something the world had never seen before. Some of Freddie Mercury's songs felt like musical mazes. Tracks like Bohemian Rhapsody or the bold cuts from Queen 2 twisted through shifting keys and dramatic turns. Then he could flip the script with something simple like Crazy Little Thing Called Love, built on just a few chords. That was his magic. Complex one minute, playful the next, dramatic yet light, but always magnetic. What makes it even wilder? Freddie often admitted he could barely read music. He didn't rely on rules. He sat at the piano and let instinct take over. The ideas just poured out. It wasn't technical perfection driving him, it was pure feeling. But the records were only half the story. The real explosion happened on stage. Freddie lived for live performance. Whether it was a small theater or a packed stadium, he owned it. His style mixed shock, charm, drama, and total control. When he stepped under those lights, it felt like something electric had taken over. David Bowie once said, "Freddie didn't just join theatrical rock, he pushed it over the edge." Brian May explained that Freddie could reach the very last person in the highest seat and pull them into the moment. He didn't just perform, he connected. Then came July 13th, 1985, Live Aid. In just 20 minutes at Wembley Stadium, Queen delivered what many still call the greatest live rock performance ever. Wearing jeans and a white tank top, Freddie had 72,000 people clapping and singing in perfect unity. His powerful a cappella call echoed across the stadium and into history. It wasn't just a show, it was a takeover. His final performance with Queen happened at Knebworth Park in August 1986 in front of nearly 200,000 fans. He closed the night draped in a royal robe, holding a golden crown high, while God Save the Queen played. A week earlier, he had quietly told Brian May he might not be doing this much longer. The curtain was slowly falling, but he made sure the final image was unforgettable. Offstage, Freddie was full of contrasts. A gifted pianist who later stepped away from the instrument so he could move freely across the stage. A songwriter who could craft operatic harmonies one day and raw rockabilly the next. He even picked up a guitar for Crazy Little Thing Called Love. Reinvention was his comfort zone.
His private life was just as layered. He had relationships with both men and women, including actresses and models, yet he kept much of his personal world guarded. On stage, he was larger than life, bold, dazzling, unstoppable. Offstage, he could be quiet and protective of his space, but when night fell, he lived intensely, fast, loud, and fearless. At their peak, Queen's parties became legendary, stories whispered about long after the music stopped. If there was ever a night that defined rock excess, it was Queen's 1978 jazz album party in New Orleans. The scene was unreal. Bare waiters carried trays through the crowd. Wrestlers posed inside a bathtub. Performers entertained guests in shocking ways. It was chaos, luxury, and pure spectacle all at once. That night, rock and roll excess had a face, and it wore a mustache. This wild world was far from Freddie's strict childhood in India and his early quiet life in England. But once fame hit, he didn't believe in slowing down. Even after learning he was living with a serious illness, he kept moving forward. He refused to let fear define him. Months after his diagnosis, he celebrated his 41st birthday in Ibiza with a party that became legend. Around 700 guests showed up, hundreds of bottles of champagne flowed, fireworks lit up the sky so brightly they were reportedly visible from Majorca. By morning, the bill even included the cost of 232 broken glasses. It was bigger than life, just like him. By the mid-1980s, Freddie's fame was so massive that even royalty wanted to escape with him. His friendship with Princess Diana was quietly known in certain circles. One night, he reportedly disguised her in a jacket, hat, and sunglasses and took her to London's Royal Vauxhall Tavern, a place where she could relax away from cameras for a few hours. For once, she wasn't a princess. She was just another guest enjoying the night. Freddie also crossed paths with Michael Jackson. In 1983, they tried recording together, but their personalities clashed. Freddie later joked that he couldn't focus with a llama in the studio, while stories say Jackson once stopped a session over behavior he didn't approve of. The collaboration faded, leaving only what-ifs and stories behind. When it came to his personal life, Freddie stayed guarded. He rarely spoke publicly about his sexuality, and even his parents were not fully aware of everything. Some fans believed he poured his feelings into songs like Bohemian Rhapsody, hiding truth inside poetic lyrics. Yet one person stood at the center of his life for years, Mary Austin. He met her in 1969 when she worked at the fashion store Biba. Freddie was 24 and struggling financially. Mary was 19, grounded and steady. They quickly built a life together in a small flat. For years, she supported him while he chased a dream few believed in. When success arrived, Freddie proposed, but later he opened up about his attraction to men. Mary once told him directly that he was gay. Their romantic relationship ended, but their bond did not. She remained one of the most important people in his life. Freddie called her his common-law wife. He left her Garden Lodge and half of his fortune. She also became the guardian of his ashes, a secret she has protected ever since. Later came Barbara Valentine, an Austrian actress whose bold personality matched his energy. Behind the fame, behind the parties, there were deep loyalties, hidden truths, and relationships that shaped the man the world thought it knew.
During his years in Munich, Freddie fell deeply for Winnie Kurtzberger, a German restaurateur who gave him a wedding band he wore with pride. But the man who truly stood by him was Jim Hutton, an Irish hairdresser who became his life partner. Freddie called him his husband. He wore the gold ring Jim gave him until his final days, and even built a home with him in Ireland. Jim stayed beside him for 7 years, through illness and fading strength, loyal until the very end. Outside of romance, Freddie's passions burned just as fiercely. His cats were like family. While on tour, he would call home and ask someone to hold the phone to their ears just so he could speak to them. His favorite, Delilah, even inspired a song. That wasn't just affection, that was devotion. Garden Lodge overflowed with Japanese art and rare antiques. Freddie collected treasures with the same intensity he brought to music. Inside Queen, that intensity sometimes sparked arguments. He once joked that the band would argue about the very air they breathed, but that tension pushed them to create songs that still shake stadiums today. As the years passed, AIDS weakened his body, but never his spirit. He kept his diagnosis private until November 23, 1991, publicly confirming it just one day before his death. On November 24th, at only 45 years old, Freddie Mercury was gone. The world stood still. How do you sum up someone that big, that bold, that alive? Brian May said it simply: Freddie Mercury, a lover of life and a singer of songs, and that might be the closest anyone can get. But not every chapter of his life was built on loyalty. Some relationships came with hidden costs. One of the most controversial involved a man named Paul Prenter. By the mid-1970s, as Freddie's fame exploded, Paul Prenter entered his world. They reportedly met in 1975 at a bar. Within 2 years, Prenter became Freddie's manager. Rumors swirled that their connection was more than professional. Some believed they were romantically involved, though Prenter's family later denied it. The truth remains debated. At first, their partnership appeared solid. The early years seemed productive and stable, but by 1982, cracks started forming. Queen released Hot Space, an album heavily influenced by funk and disco, a sharp turn from their signature rock sound. Freddie embraced the experiment. Not everyone agreed. Tension inside the band grew louder, and behind the scenes, loyalties were beginning to shift. And this was only the beginning of a betrayal that would shake Freddie's world in ways few expected. Brian May and Roger Taylor strongly disliked the direction of Hot Space. They believed Paul Prenter had influenced Freddie's shift toward funk and disco. When the album failed to meet expectations, tensions inside Queen intensified. The atmosphere grew heavy. Still, Freddie kept Prenter close, even as the bond between Prenter and the rest of the band nearly collapsed. But loyalty has limits.
In 1987, after their relationship ended, Prenter sold a story to The Sun. In that interview, he publicly discussed Freddie's private life, including his relationship with Jim Hutton. For those close to Freddie, it felt like a deep betrayal. According to Freddie's brother, Ray, Prenter felt hurt and cast aside. He had worked with Mercury for years and believed he had little to show for it. At the time, Prenter was also seriously ill and reportedly struggling financially. Ray suggested that desperation may have played a role in his decision. Still, the damage was done. For many fans, this became one of the darkest chapters in Freddie's story. Trust had been broken. After that, Freddie's circle became smaller. His privacy became tighter. Only a chosen few were allowed close enough to see what he was truly facing. Freddie Mercury had always lived loudly and boldly on stage, glittering outfits, stadium-shaking vocals, pure showmanship. But behind the spectacle, he protected his personal life with fierce determination. Very few people were allowed behind the walls of Garden Lodge, and even fewer knew the full truth during his final years. By November 24, 1991, the world had lost one of its greatest voices. What shocked so many wasn't just his death, it was how private he had remained. Outside his inner circle, almost no one truly understood how serious his condition had become. The last time fans saw him publicly with Queen was at the 1990 Brit Awards. After that, he withdrew from the spotlight. Inside his Kensington home, he spent his time with only those he trusted most: his assistant Peter Freestone, his partner Jim Hutton, and Mary Austin, who had remained a constant presence in his life. The other members of Queen were aware he was unwell. They could see the changes, but Freddie rarely wanted to discuss his health. Rumors had circulated in the press for years. Some tabloids had even claimed as early as 1986 that he had been tested for HIV. Still, Freddie refused to confirm anything publicly. He chose silence. He chose control. And in those final years, he chose to face everything on his own terms, away from the noise, away from the headlines, and surrounded only by the people he trusted most. For years, rumors swirled, but nothing was ever confirmed. And in true Freddie style, he controlled the story until the very end. On November 23, 1991, just one day before his death, his publicist, Roxy Meads, released a statement Freddie had written himself. In it, he confirmed he was HIV positive and living with AIDS. He explained that he had kept his illness private to protect those closest to him. But now, he said, the time had come for the truth. He asked his fans to stand with him, his doctors, and everyone fighting the disease. It was calm, it was direct, and it was brave. Just 24 hours later, Freddie Mercury was gone at 45 years old. In the early 1990s, AIDS carried intense fear and stigma. There was no cure. Public understanding was limited.
For someone as famous as Freddie to speak openly, even at the very end, was powerful. It wasn't just an announcement, it was defiance. The surviving members of Queen later admitted they knew he was seriously ill, but they never pushed him for details. Brian May said it was almost unspoken. Freddie told them he couldn't tour. That was enough. No one forced the conversation.
In 1989, during a dinner in Montreux, Freddie finally confirmed the truth to his inner circle. Even though they suspected it, hearing it out loud was devastating. Brian later reflected that Freddie feared becoming a public spectacle. He didn't want pity. He didn't want headlines turning him into a symbol. He wanted to keep working. Business as usual, as he put it, right until the end. Jim Hutton remained by his side through everything. They had met in 1985 at a nightclub. What started as a spark became lasting love. At Garden Lodge, they built a quiet life away from cameras. They wore wedding rings as a private sign of commitment. Jim later said their relationship was theirs alone, not for the world to analyze. On November 24, 1991, Freddie Mercury took his final bow at Garden Lodge. The cause was bronchial pneumonia resulting from AIDS-related complications. Years later, in 2010, Jim Hutton passed away after battling cancer. Their story ended quietly, far from the stage lights. Freddie lived much of his life under a spotlight, but he chose to leave on his own terms. Even without the costumes, the roar of the crowd, or the grand entrances, he still controlled the final act. And then there was what he left behind. Inside Garden Lodge in Kensington stood more than just a house. It was a reflection of him, bold, artistic, deeply personal. Freddie bought the property in 1980 for around £500,000 at 1 Logan Place. Behind those high brick walls, he created his sanctuary. For 3 decades, the home remained largely untouched, a time capsule of taste, creativity, and individuality. When people finally saw inside, they were stunned all over again. Even in silence, Freddie Mercury still knew how to make an impact. Garden Lodge wasn't just a Georgian house in Kensington. Behind the famous green door, it became Freddie Mercury's private universe. Friends knew it by name, but to Freddie, it was more than an address. It was a reflection of who he really was. Ornate, yet intimate. Loud, yet peaceful. Victorian drama blended with Japanese calm. Mary Austin, his former fiancée and lifelong confidant, remembered the first time they stepped inside. She said it instantly felt like peace, a true artist's home. Yet Freddie's bold personality was everywhere.